let me share my screen and continue in a minute. Okay, can you please confirm if you can see the slides? Perfect. So, just a minute. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. We're live on YouTube, I guess. I would like to thank John Healy from myspeakingscore.com for sponsoring this session and making it freely available to everyone interested. Today we will talk about automated assessment of spoken performance by sharing our data-driven insights based on the analysis of almost 4,000 responses submitted to the SpeechRater. And the SpeechRater is the automated scoring engine ETS uses to measure candidates' spoken performance on the IBT examinations. So I want to start with a very brief information about how any automated scoring of speech system works. So they basically receive human output, they convert it into digitized output, and then by measuring certain features, they calculate a speaking proficiency score. And when measuring this score, they usually utilize rigorous statistics and corpus comparison. They have their models and they compare the digitized output to that on their corpus. So I would like to mention some of the features they use to measure spoken performance. For example, they say they measure fluency, but they don't have a score called fluency. It's not a feature, it's a category. Features are more specific. For example, in order to measure fluency, they measure mean silence duration, speaking rate, in words per second, average of chunk length in seconds, number of repetitions, number of disfluencies, number of silences per second. So for example, they use rigorous statistics to measure fluency, but for another category like pronunciation, they have to rely on a corpus, a data on their corpus. This includes both native data and non-native data. So basically, the system works in a combination of statistical analysis and corpus comparison. No one knows all the features that ETS specifically uses to measure spoken performance, but I can say that there are around 200 features they measure for every candidate to evaluate, to present a final speaking score on the SpeechRater. Now, in this section, I would like to share with you a demonstration to show how it really works in practice. I have two audio files from the ETS with ETS-approved human rater scores, and I got them tested by the SpeechRater so that you can easily see how it works in practice. So here we go with the first audio.
I think Kazim Azhar, who was a famous in actor and a musician, he was famous. He became famous in Arab homeland, and he overcome almost of Arab actor, and he distract in soft musicians. And he appear in the screen, a lot of the screen in the world, and he become, and I think he become actor, musician in the world, one musician in the world.
So any guesses about this one? How do you think a human rater would measure this performance? Perhaps, you can write your scores on the chat box. Okay, the human rater score for this one was, as you can guess, just one. Okay, and as I said, I got this tested by the SpeechRater by uploading the audio there, and again, the score was very low. You can see a lot of reds here, which means performance at the very low level. And the score on the SpeechRater for this output was 2.15. Okay, so a 1 from a human rater, 2.15 on the SpeechRater. Now another audio file.
Were two developments that allowed ancient Roman cities to expand. On the one hand, the development of a certain building material, that is concrete. Concrete was a material that hardened underwater, and so it was possible for Roman architects to construct structures like bridges or like even highways, so that they could go over the river, and also that they had a better way of transporting food, for example. A second development that helped Roman cities to expand is the development of so-called aqueducts. Aqueducts are a series of channels that help to transport pure and fresh water even from a great distance. So cities didn't have to be built in close to a water reservoir because they could transport water.
And this, it got 4 out of 4 by a human rater, and it got 3.31 on the SpeechRater. Now, based on our model, the combination of the human rater score and the SpeechRater score shows us that the final score on these two performances would be 12 for the first performance and 26 for the second performance. Okay, so for the second output, again, you can see that the human rater thought this was an excellent performance. This got 4 out of 4. But the SpeechRater detected some problems in some of the aspects, and it lowered to score from 30 to 26. Now, having made this demonstration, I would also like to talk briefly about the background of the SpeechRater. So it came into effect in 2008, and ETS started to use the SpeechRater for online practice tests for the IBT examination. But since 2019, they have been using this for the actual IBT examination. So until 2019, they had 2 human raters in real administrations. But since 2019, they have been using the SpeechRater score and 1 human rater to evaluate a spoken performance. Now, I've talked to some people, some data scientists from the ETS, and they all said that they are currently using the SpeechRater and the human rater together in all high-stakes examinations, like the IBT, because they also know that the SpeechRater score alone can have problems of its own, especially in terms of topic development. They also say that the SpeechRater was an advantage because there were certain biases when they only used the human raters. So their conclusion is that the SpeechRater and the human rater working together can produce the best results. By the way, they are using the SpeechRater on its own without a human rater on low stakes examinations like the digital TOEFL ITP, for example. But there are a lot of things we still do not know about the SpeechRater. One thing we don't know by evidence is how the scores are distributed. Yes, there is a SpeechRater score, there is a human rater score, but we don't know how the final score is exactly calculated. We have a model developed, based on thousands of analyses, but still nothing ETS chooses to tell us on paper. when we look at the speaking rubric that ETS shares on its website and the SpeechRater features shared publicly, we can see huge parallels in between. So they are trying to measure the same components, the human and the SpeechRater. They are focusing on very similar components, but again, we don't know how their weights are distributed among these features. So this brings us to our results. So we looked at almost 4,000 responses. These were responses presented to question items on My Speaking Score by a variety of prospective test takers between May and November 2022. And our main motivation here was to understand how the SpeechRater works. Because as I said, there is only limited information that teachers can use to understand how the SpeechRater works. We also wanted to understand how each of the indicators we know contribute to the overall score and explore the indicators that correlate with each other. Now, our results showed us that some of the indicators were stronger than others. Rob, for example, in his presentation mentioned some of the scores, whereas a score on one dimension was low, scores on other dimensions were higher. Now we know that not all dimensions contribute equally to the final score. There is a variety based on their maybe ETS perceived importance in fluency, in language use, in whatever. So our analysis showed that phrase length, pause frequency, sustained speech, and speaking rate are the strongest predictors of the final score. And distribution of pauses and vowels were again strong predictors, but the others, rhythm, grammatical accuracy, discourse coherence, vocabulary diversity, depth, and repetitions, they were again, they had a considerable predictive capacity, but their predictive values were lower than the first 6. Now, based on the results, our second audio, the top, the higher performer in the demonstration, I would like to briefly mention how ETS explains each of these dimensions. Phrase length is about how long the phrases are on average. Pause frequency is about how often one pauses when speaking. Sustained speech is about how smoothly you speak without any interruption. Speaking rate is about how fast you speak. The faster, the better, they think. Distribution of pauses is about how effectively and naturally you use pauses. Vowels are about how closely your vowel sounds resemble a native speaker. And rhythm means how closely your syllable stress resembles a native speaker. But when they say how well it resembles a native speaker, they don't only compare the responses to a native model. Their model is based on a data set from native and non-native speakers. So in their way, they are trying to find the perfect model, and they are checking the extent to which each new submission fits well into this model. So, but the important thing here is that the model does not only consist of native speaker outputs. So, to continue with the information in the list, grammatical accuracy is about accuracy at the language structure level compared to their corpus, the model. Discourse coherence is about how well the ideas in your response are connected to each other and the question statement. This is a tricky one, for example. So when you use the SpeechRater alone without a human rater, you can easily talk about the question, but not respond to the question, but still get a good score on the SpeechRater. Vocabulary diversity is about how varied vocabulary is in terms of different forms of speech, like noun, verb, adjective, adverb. Vocabulary depth is about how sophisticated the use of vocabulary is based on how frequently and accurately the respondent uses a range of vocabulary items, so not repeating the same vocabulary over and over again. And the final one is again related to vocabulary depth. This is about how often you repeat a word or phrase. Now, we also checked if there was correlation between these different features, because we wanted to see if ETS approached these features as separate indicators or indicators that are in correlation with each other. And our results showed that the features have very high correlation scores with each other, especially the strongest 6 predictors. These are like everywhere on this table. So it can be said that, especially if you have little time to prepare, it would be wiser to focus on the stronger predictors. So, some implications based on this information. Now, remembering some of the strongest indicators, pause frequency was about how often one pauses in speech. Sustained speech was about the average number of words without any pause or fillers. Speaking rate was about words per second. Phrase length was about how long your phrases are in words. Distribution of pauses is about, again, pause to speech ratio. So how many pauses you have and how long your speech is. Vowels is about how well one pronounces vowels compared to native and non-native speakers. Now, these definitions tell us that we first need to understand what a pause is by their standards. So what they consider silence, what they consider speech. ETS publications tell that silence is happens when there is more than 1.145 seconds between 2 words. So any longer pause than 0.145 seconds is silence, is a pause. If the silence is longer than almost 0.5 seconds, they consider it a long silence. And between 2 clauses, if the silence is more than almost 0.2 seconds, they say it's a long within clause silence. Now, they divide the number of silences based on this calculation by the total number of words, for example, when measuring performance. They also divide the number of silences by total response duration. Okay, so these are very specific measurements. So in light of this information, we can say that test takers should work towards pausing less often. This is very clear because pause frequency and distribution of pauses, speech rate and sustained speech, these are all among the strongest predictors. So pausing less often is there, but at the same time, people should speak fast enough. Okay, I will give you some numbers later, but they should be able to speak fast enough with little or no pauses. So saying more words without any pauses and fillers should be a specific target for test takers. And in terms of the word count, they should work towards including more words in their phrases. And again, have no or little pause between their phrases, and increasing the number of words they use in their speech per second. So to summarize, there are 2 clear goals for us here. One is to have no or little pause in our speech. And the second is to increase the number of words we use, but while being comprehensible, intelligible, and sticking with the topic. So we also wanted to see how reliable our scores, our insights are, because as I said, there is still a lot of information that we do not have, and for many reasons, ETS does not share this information. So even though there are publicly available features, even though they share scores on certain aspects, there are still things that the data we have do not fully explain the variety. But I can say that our scores are reliable to a large extent. By the 4 tasks, our the variance scores we had were always higher than 70%. This means that, for example, in question 2, the data we had was enough to explain 80% of the variance in the overall score calculated by ETS. So in other words, the data we have can explain 80% of the variation in the scores. So, final notes on the speech. Rob mentioned some great advice on tools and practice strategies for test takers. I am delighted to share that you can access most of them on one single platform. On the score report page on My Speaking Score, you can see your SpeechRater-score, your estimated speaking score out of 30, your rank within the entire population. For example, our better performer, second audio in the demonstration, she was in this 72nd percentile in the entire population, and your words per minute score. Now, how is this relevant? The words per minute. The test takers at the good level, those getting between 26 and 30, utter 158 words per minute on average based on our analysis. But those at the fair level, they utter around 137 on average. So, saying around 150 words per minute should be a target, and the score report on My Speaking Score can easily give you this number. In addition, on the same page, you will see a sound wave generated from the response submitted. And looking at the sound wave, you can visually detect pauses and see if there is a pattern. Like, for example, is there usually a pause after using fillers, or between transitions? So you can see if there are patterns and you can work around those patterns. Now, again, below the page, you will get a transcription of your speech and the distribution of word forms in your speech, what percent of your output consists of nouns, prepositions, pronouns, verbs, etc. Looking at this data, you can see the words repeated, the range of vocabulary items and word forms used, the range of vocabulary items again. So these all contribute to the final score in different ways, and you can have a good idea of what you should do or how you should practice. For example, when we look at these scores, we can see concrete repeated twice in very close instances, a lot of fillers like ums used in speech. So these are things that a student can work on in the near future. So the platform will also give you specific scores on each indicator, but more importantly, it will give you detailed scores that show the candidate's rank in the entire population. For example, this candidate, based on phrase length, was around here in the 49th percentile in the entire group. Now remember, phrase length was one of the strongest predictors based on our data, and the test taker performed not so greatly on this dimension, so which might have decreased her score from 30 to 26. Not on its own, but I'm sure it played a huge role in the drop from 30 to 26. This page also presents the test taker's proximity to the mean score by top achievers. It tells that in this category, phrase length, the mean score by top achievers was 91.27. So the candidate will need to work on improving her score in this category if she wants to get a higher score. Now, to conclude, in one of the books, Sherlock Holmes said, data, 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 you cannot make bricks without clay. Well, unfortunately, ETS chooses not to reveal how the specific features in the SpeechRater operate. I have often witnessed that even some ETS employees who work closely with the TOEFL do not have a very clear idea of how the SpeechRater works. The little information ETS shares is published in scholarly pieces, and I can easily say that based on the kind of information published, it is intended more for academics than for teachers. I can, of course, understand their motivation and reasons for not disclosing much, and I respect it. But just like they need data to develop testing strategies, teachers need data to develop teaching strategies. So here is the clay, and please let us know if you need support making bricks. Thank you, everyone. I'll end my presentation here, but I would be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm not sure if you have YouTube open, Hakan, but I think there might be a few questions there. I can relay them to.
That would be great if you can read.
Sure.
Or I can open it here.
So we have one question here. I'll just, while you're waiting, while we're waiting, from Jeff, please, when you ask us to guess a score, give us the scoring range. I scored 19 because I felt the total score was 3, it must be 30. I'm not quite sure. Maybe Hakan, you can answer that one. I'm not really sure what Jeff is asking there, but Jeff, if you could maybe ask that one again. Just rephrase it, maybe.
Let's see if I can see the question myself. Okay.
Philip, is there an easy way for us to watch the YouTube stream?
Go to the EFL Magazine YouTube channel. It should be there.
That's one way to do it, eh?
So he says, I think I scored 19 because I felt the total score was 30. Well, I don't think there's a way to answer this question. So one was perception, the other one was the result. You know, cannot really speculate on that.
No longer a question, Jeff has said.
There might have been many things that you know created that difference between the expected score and the actual score.
Jeff has another question. So Jeff, please go ahead. Jeff, please type away.
I can also respond if he has a question. I can also respond on the YouTube channel. So I don't really want to.
Yeah, sure. There'll be a lot more joining later and from that stream. So yeah, if you could, I know you've subscribed to the channel, so yeah, you should be getting the updates. Great. Jeff says, can you recommend apps we can use to improve the speaking rate? Well, I can think of one. John Healy might be able to help you with that one.
Well, my speaking score is a great measurer of speaking rate, but I think Sandra is implying that maybe there's a tool out there to help you actually speed up. Yeah, there's all kinds of techniques. You got to go. Rob Howard is the man to ask about this. How do you speak faster?
The best app that you can get on the market to learn how to speak faster is hire a teacher. It's the best. You need the feedback. Go to a teacher. And, John's got a great platform here for measuring, and I think it's a great tool. And I think John will agree. It's not the tool to make you faster. It's an evaluation tool, which I think it's wonderful. I like everything that you have. Get a qualified teacher. That's what you need. Stop going to apps and think that apps are going to change your world, because they won't yet.
Yeah, if you can, that's the best way. And you're quite right. Like any measurement, it's a lag measure. It's showing you historical data or present state information, right? And so it's great because you could say, now I understand that there's a gap. So in our data, we see the top performers are speaking at 158 words per minute and above. And there is a significant performance issue if you're speaking, for example, below 130 words per minute. That's a great place to start. The question is there a way to get to start speaking faster now that you know that, right? And going to a teacher is a great way to do it. What Rob is implying is the immediate corrective feedback, right? The teachers can provide you.
Exactly.
And it's the delay that will really impede your ability to make significant progress, right? Like, remember back in the day when you get an essay back from your teacher and it's covered in red ink, it's like something you wrote 3 weeks ago. It's like, you don't even pay attention to it. You need that immediate intervention that a teacher can provide if you can afford it. For self-guided students, there are other techniques. Josh has a couple of good videos on how to do it. One great way to do it is to start shadowing, if you can, fluent speakers in TED Talks, for example.
But with that, I'd like to add the caveat, something that you said before, John, that we teach TED Talkers, presenters, everybody else to do one type of speaking. That's not what the TOEFL test is testing. So there is kind of a danger in, working with TED Talks for this purpose, but I know what you're saying.
So, Philip, I think I'm finally able to understand what Jeff meant. So if we have time, we can talk about the question here. If not, I can...
Please go ahead, Jay. We have some time.
Yeah, sure. So I think his problem is with accent. He said, I'm a Nigerian schooling in Turkey. I observed that I hardly scored above 26 because I have some bias since that is my first language, but with some wrong foundation. I observed Turks who learned it as a second language have a better accent as they learned from movies. Can I improve it even after learning this issue? Actually some research conducted with human raters. It shows that accent can be a huge source of bias among human raters. The same research report showed that the rate could change based on the rater's agreement with the response. So there were a lot of bias and subjectivity in human raters. No matter how much training they have, this is personal, this is human. But the speech rater does not have this. It cannot have this because it is trained on TOEFL data. data from their native corpus, coming from other exams they administer in the States, from native speakers and non-native speakers taking the TOEFL. So I'm sure there are a lot of Nigerian people taking the TOEFL IBT examination. So you're also represented in the corpus. But when it comes to human raters, I think that will have to remain a fact. You cannot change the biases in humans. But when it comes to your second question about are there ways to master speaking with a good accent, I strongly suggest that you don't work on improving your accent. It's just not fair. You just keep on practicing with a teacher, as Rob said, who can give you some good advice on what to work on. An accent, it shouldn't be a criteria. I strongly suggest that you stop focusing on your accent, but improving the quality of your speech.
I would like to add, being a Bostonian and having these horrible pronunciation of vowels, based on the exam, everybody from Boston who goes to Harvard and MIT would not get into a university. So, but I agree with you. I think working with a teacher until John comes up with an app, which I'm sure he will in the next year, that will help you to, speed up and to work on the pronunciation and everything else. Wait, I want 10%, John. Work with a teacher, I think is what you need to do. And, use the tools like John's tool to evaluate what you're doing.
We should build something together, Rob. I'd love to work with you.
All right, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Philip's going to want part of it, so, we have to cut him out, but maybe he's not listening.
Oh, I am. And and thanks again, Rob, John, and especially Hakan for the very insightful and learned presentation. So this will be available on the YouTube channel, and please, for all those who are watching in the future, put your questions in the comments, and I'm sure Hakan will get back to you. And just a reminder about myspeakingscore.com. It's myspeakingscore, all one word, .com, and please go there and look. And I think you get a free test, don't you, John, on the platform?
Well, anyone who signs up from retail gets 3 complete free tests. But if you reach out to Michelle's on the call. Hi, Michelle. She'll hook you up with credits, and we'll unlock our whole test library for you. You can reach out to Michelle at myspeakingscore.com. You can reach out to me directly, John at myspeakingscore.com, and I'll take care of you. I should say one more thing, because we're talking to teachers today, that we have a fairly robust teacher account that lets you upload audio from files. So your student sends you an MP3 file, you can upload and get those scored. You can't on the student account. You can also onboard students, so you can see all of your students' scores and listen to all your students' responses and everything. And that's not available to the public yet. So if you want a teacher account, I can certainly hook you up. I'll blast a bunch of credits into your account, so it won't cost you a thing. And just reach out to me, and I'll make it happen like today. Here to help you. Michelle, are you okay with receiving also requests for help from anybody? Of course you are. She's our customer care superstar. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks for the plug, guys. Thanks.
You're welcome, John, and thanks as always. And we've just got a few minutes, so I think if you need to disburden yourself for the next couple of minutes, please do take the time.